to this computer. Okay. Recording
Okay.
should have started.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So what you're looking at is basically the first kind of splash screen that comes up in Oracle.
Okay.
Across the top there in that bar that you can actually scroll to the right on is all the kind of generalized navigation things that you can go to.
Okay.
The one that we're going to go to today, we're going to spend our time on, is called product management. So when you click on product management, you get these boxes. And the box that we're going to concentrate on is product information management. So you're going to open that. And this gets you to kind of the typical screens that you see when you first kind of get into the application. You've got these, what they call infolets, which are these boxes that you see in front of you. And
Hmm.
typically they've got graphics in them. Now, in this case, there's not a lot of stuff that's been set up. So they're pretty much blank, which is fine for now. You don't typically see a lot of this in what we call PIM, product information management. Most of the work, most of the actions that you're going to perform are going to be on the far right side, that very top icon that looks like a piece of paper. Further down, click that. That's going to bring up a list of tasks. And these are the different tasks that you can perform in item management.
And we wanted to start a create item, right?
We're going to start with create item, but before we start with create item, let's go down to browse items because I want to show you how you can get around when you've got a situation where you've got items that have already been created and you want to be able to look around. Because a lot of times you need to go find an item to do something with it, and this is the way to do it. So this comes up in the browse item screen, and you can pick one of these categories. I don't care which one, high tech, healthcare, whatever.
Do food and beverage.
Okay, then drill down a little bit into that. And when you get to a folder that
That one
has,
doesn't have anything.
yeah, when you get to a folder that has some items in it, they'll show up on the right. Okay, that's probably not a good one. Go down to, um, go to retail. I know there's some in retail. And go to grocery. Or, okay. Uh, yeah, go to
Grocery.
grocery. Go to canned fruit. All right, click on canned fruit because I know there's some there.
How come it doesn't have a drop down list if it has something in it?
I don't know. Maybe you weren't clicking on the folder right.
I clicked it.
Well, go try another one. Go try one that you
Well,
didn't
I've
show you
clicked it
anymore.
and it's got stuff.
Well, I know, but
This
that's
one
because
has a drop down and then nothing shows up.
well, click until it turns blue.
Okay, well, this is blue.
Okay, click the bottom, the one below it until it turns blue. All right, there's no items there. All right, so go back to canned fruit. Okay, now we've got some items. And typically when you're implementing Oracle for a company, you know, they need to determine this hierarchy. And you've got these catalogs that you see off to the left there that kind of determine, what they might have. So for instance, let's say you're doing your art and your art was a business and you had to define items for your art. Well, what are some of the common categories that you have? Well, you have ceramics, you have paintings. What else do you have?
Oil, gouache, watercolor.
Yeah. So those are the different categories that you would define your art under. And
Okay.
this, and then you would have the individual items, and the individual items are what you see in this right-hand screen. So yeah, there's nothing below the item at this point. So just
Would
click
you
it.
ever have what would be below the item if there was something?
Well, if you had like an item structure, remember when I used to talk about bill of materials
Yeah,
and you had parent items and you had component items and stuff like that? That's
yeah.
what you'd see down there, but none of these do. These are end items. These are basically cans of tomatoes.
Okay.
All right, so the link is the item number itself. So if you click on that link, that brings up the item screen. Okay, and this is a typical item screen. So you got, you know, can of tomatoes, and then you have to define all of the aspects of this particular item. So you've got a part number kind of in the middle of the screen. You can see that right there. You've got the description, which is just a short description of what it
Wait,
is.
where's the part number? Is that
They
considered the
were,
part number?
that's the part number, yeah.
Okay.
Oracle calls it item, but it's universal. It's a part number. A lot of companies call it SKU for uh
For the code.
well, yeah, it's like you've heard of SKU numbers when you were at
Yeah.
yeah. So those the SKU number and the part number and the item, they're all synonymous. They're kind of all the same stuff there. Then you have kind of the short description right below that. And then you have an item class called canned fruit. And that's just a different way to group these items. Um, we're not going through any approval status for these items because we're just creating the item. You know, Oracle does have a way to allow you to send an item out for approval. So if you have a situation where a company says, we don't just let people make items, we, send them through an approval process. If that's the case, then you could have that. Most companies don't. Most companies just restrict the security to be able to get to this form based on the user and the user role they have. So,
Okay.
so you don't really have to use approvals much.
And then
Uh,
this shows the person who created it.
Yes, that's
Okay.
that's the user name that created it. And then off to the right there, you have item status, which is active.
This
That
thing, does this allow you to contact them?
hover over it and click more. No, it's not.
Oh,
It's not that intuitive.
well, yeah, it's got all of this
Oh, okay,
information.
yeah, I guess it does. It's not like it's bringing up an email
Well,
form,
yeah,
but
well, you can click it and it'll take you there.
yeah, yeah. And anytime you see those little orange things up there, you hover over them and it'll let you to do that. So it's kind of neat. I mean, it's a lot better than that old EBS stuff I used to show you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, item status. If you do the drop down, we've only got a few statuses. The ones that come with Oracle are active and inactive. You can create others, and they can control whether the item can be transacted or not, whether it can be sold, whether it can be purchased, and stuff like that, depending on how you set those attributes for the statuses. We'll talk about that more later.
Okay.
Okay, user item type. If you drop that down, you've got a long list here, but most companies, they've got purchased items that they buy from suppliers, and they've got finished goods items, which they sell to customers. Now, you can have a lot of stuff in between that, and they all mean different things.
Hmm.
But when you're creating user item types for the client, then you're going to get some seeded ones that Oracle provides, but the ones that you're going to use mostly are going to be finished good and purchased item. And there's a
Okay.
few others you'll use, but 90% of the time, that's about what you need.
Is
That's about
phantom
all you
item
need.
used when it's not there?
No, phantom item, that has to do with how that item is used in a bill of material.
Okay.
Um, I'll talk about that way down the road. Pack type is something new. You've got ways to define packs in Oracle. So, for instance, you might buy these from your supplier in individual units, but then they put them in cases, and you want to show them in case, or you want to show them in individual units. But you've got all these different pack types that you can use as well.
Okay.
Um, Revision, if you need to use item revisions, Oracle supports it. Most companies don't use item revisions. The only companies I've worked for that use item revisions are typically high-tech firms where they're building, um, circuit assemblies, printed circuit boards, telecom companies.
Is
Um,
there, what would this mean?
well, say for instance, you're creating a oh you're creating a motherboard for a computer.
Okay.
Okay, so you've done the layout, you've put the components in, you've created this motherboard. Okay, you release it, you start buying it, you start building it, you start selling it to your customers, and then the engineer comes along and says, we need to make a revision to it. I'm going to go in and we're going to, change the circuit board around a bit and either make it more powerful or more useful or improve the reliability. Who knows? But so if they do that and they say, well, is it still compatible? Can we still buy it under the same part number, or do we need to create a new part number? And a lot of times they'll say, well, no, it's not. We don't want to change the part number, but we do want to reflect to the system that it's a different revision, that we've made some changes to it. This allows you to kind of track those changes. So when you create a new revision, you can say, what you changed, why you changed it, and how it's going to impact your supply chain for that particular item.
Is there any reason? Do they always keep it with letters or do they ever change
We
it?
You can put numerics. You can even have multiple digits. I think the max digits is 3. You can use alphanumeric, but typically, if I'm doing it for a company that doesn't even do revisions, I'll just leave it alpha and let the default be revision A.
Okay.
All right. The creation date, that's the date and time that you save the record, or whoever created the record saved the record.
Okay.
All right. So moving,
Does all this matter at the bottom?
yeah, it all matters. It's all important.
I know, but you showed me all this and I wasn't sure.
Okay. It all matters. It's just that, it's just how it matters, like if you look at this overview tab, like click where it says specifications, click that. It's right to the right of overviews. Go
Specifications.
off to the left, way to the left.
Is it
See
up
where
here?
it's, yes.
Okay.
All
I
right.
was looking down here.
Yeah. See, Oracle doesn't show it, but these are different tab forms. So if you click specifications and you click back in overview, you're going to see different things.
Okay.
Okay.
And
So
this is
let's,
something that the person who creates the item, are they under all of this?
yes, the person that creates the item has the opportunity to go and make changes to the data that's underneath each of these tabs.
Okay.
Now I need to explain what these tabs are.
Okay.
Okay, in the overview tab, you've got a few basic things. You can put in what's called a formatted description. The formatted description is just it's kind of like a word looking description where you can have italics and bolds and stuff like that. You can even put in hyperlinks or whatever. uh, that uh, could get used by your web-based selling system, so that your web-based selling system isn't just stuck with plain basic text. You can put this formatted one in, and it'll serve it up to the user so that they can see it with all the fancy rich text format that you see there.
Okay.
Uh, the the little pencil icon to the right of it, if you click that, it lets you edit that description. So it brings up this little editor box, and you can see from the icons that you can do what's called rich text formatting on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you can play with that later sometime.
I know what
Very,
all this is.
yeah, it's a lot of this stuff is very, very basic, so you don't have to worry. You can figure it out later. That long description, that's non-formatted. That's not rich text. That's just a bigger text block where you can put in a longer description
Okay.
compared to the short description up at the top there. So you get three different ways to put an item description in. Now, do you need three different ways? Maybe, maybe
Is
not.
this considered the short description?
That's the short description. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what appears on most of the forms in Oracle.
Is that how you edit it, or you can make it bigger? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't, well, for some reason, you can't edit the description. I'm not sure why. I mean, I
Is
know,
that only for him when he created the item?
no, I mean, the description can be changed. Oracle allows that. Now, it could be that um, there's some field that has been set in this instance where it doesn't allow a description update.
Okay.
I'd have to go look through the setups to figure out why that's the way it is. But typically the description is just a freeform text area. Okay. You see that picture of the tomato can there?
Uh-huh.
Okay. You can have multiple images of an item. So see the arrow that points to the right? Okay, there apparently isn't one for this particular one, but you could add one. So you see that plus right below the picture?
Mm-hmm.
Click that. It'll bring up a little dialog box where you could go out on your computer, pick a file, and you could upload that file to Oracle, and it would just stay there, with the image that you've set up.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you want to try that out, you could. You can go get go.
Nah.
Okay, you're good with it. Well,
Yeah.
click the choose file button so that you see the dialog that pops up.
Well, I know what it looks like.
Okay, so you're good with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you ought to try it out sometime.
Okay.
Just make sure you know. Okay, so again, that shows you how you could add images to an item.
I'm not risking accidentally putting my own files in this thing.
Oh, I was just going to let you go to Google and look up a can of tomatoes and post it up there.
They do need a better picture.
Yeah, it's pixelated, but anyway, you could do better pictures than that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about unit of measure down there. Typically, most companies work with a unit of measure called each. Like for
Okay.
you, like for like all your art stuff that you do, those would all be eaches. Like an oil painting would be in an each, ceramics would be in an each. But let's just say you were selling clay uh, to other potters. Well, you don't sell clay in eaches. Well, you kind of do. You have these boxes that are of a certain weight, and based on that weight, those boxes are kept in inventory as eaches, but the description would probably indicate the weight. But it gets a little more difficult when you work for companies that have to deal in things that are not going to be eaches. Say, for instance, you're the company that actually makes the clay.
Hmm.
Well, you're buying clay in bulk. You might buy, tons of clay from a clay provider. Well, You're not going to buy that in eaches. You're going to buy it in tons or pounds or whatever. So your unit of measure is going to be, tons or pounds or whatever. And then through the process of packaging that clay, you're going to turn it into eaches. So
Okay.
you have to be able to support multiple units of measure. And that's just kind of a common sense thing. I haven't had too much trouble getting people to understand units of measure. They can get a little confused with some of the conversions though, but we'll talk about
Do
that
you
more later.
guys do metrics or
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Uh, and I'll tell you my trick. If I get a
Google?
well, yeah, if I get a client that says, "Hey, we need to handle liters and gallons," I'm not going to ask them what the conversion is. I just Google it up and do it, and I'll set it up that way. Because I can tell you right now, Oracle out of the box doesn't come with any units of measure. You have to set them all up.
Yeah.
So
Do you guys primarily deal with the rest of the world measuring in metrics?
uh, it varies from company to company. I've worked for some companies that did everything in a metric system, and then I've worked for some companies that did everything in empirical.
Okay.
Um, but it uh, uh, usually the company, they've already got established products. They've already got, you never start with a company that's, trying to figure out what they want to make. They don't buy Oracle. It's after they've got some success and they can't handle their enterprise assets, and that's when they bring in Oracle. Well, Oracle has to be designed in such a way it can fit into any need that they might have. So that's why it kind of works that way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about these other units of measure. We'll deal with them later. You probably aren't going to have to worry about those. So let's move
What's the
on.
difference between primary and secondary?
I actually don't know. I'd have to go look it up. But if you
Okay.
wanted to look it up at the top where it says edit item, you see that question mark over there? Just to
Hold
the,
on. There we go. That one?
yeah,
Okay.
and then click that.
Which one?
Well, click the first link. Well, okay, because it'll take you to, this is Oracle's guide on how the application works.
Okay.
So, you know, there's one of two ways. I'll use these question marks to bring this up if I need to read up on something and try to understand something, or I'll just go straight to Google and I'll put in Oracle Fusion primary, secondary unit of measure.
Okay.
And a lot of times that'll bring up this one of these pages and I can just read about it.
Okay.
Back in the day when I started, didn't have any of this.
Yeah,
All
no.
we had was a row of books, and there were about 50 of them, like 2, 3 inches thick, and that's what we had to guide us.
No.
Yeah, nowadays it's all right there.
Yeah.
So, all right, so close that and let's get back into our
Oh no.
application.
Okay.
All right, so go over and let's click on the specifications tab. All right. Now this is probably the most complex tab that you're going to see in inventory for items anyway. And that's because it gives you the ability to do some stuff that um, you know may not be in the application.
Okay.
And you got to know some of this stuff because Oracle doesn't make it obvious. For instance, if you look at those links that say product details, product development, merch information, those are not standard in Oracle. Somebody built those, and
Okay.
later on down the road, I'll teach you how to build them too. But all of those are custom.
Okay.
So click on where it says canned fruit specifications. So not only did they build, um, this link to this data that you see here, they also had to build all of these um, uh, information that you see. So they set up a fruit type. They put in a list of values so that you could select from that list of values. Same way with package and consistency. And then over where it says organic, they said we're going to put a checkbox there, and they can either check it or not check it.
Okay.
And I'll show you how to set those up. That's really kind of interesting because when you do it and you come back here, you see you see how you've done it and see how it works out and how it got laid out. But you're not coding. You're not having to write HTML or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's all just a pick and click uh, type type situation.
That I can handle. When you start putting coding in there, I don't.
Yeah, I don't do any coding. Oracle's done a real good job of making it code friendly or not code friendly, I
I've
guess. I don't
done
know.
very little coding,
Yeah, me too.
like MySpace and my website, and that's about it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. In Oracle, you're not going to run into that. At least not for a long, long time. And even then, it's not much. Now, where it says item organization, and you see that list below that,
Uh-huh.
those are seeded. Those are lists of attributes that Oracle has to have.
Okay.
The application just has to have. Now, you may not use them, but Oracle gives them to you and says, for, depending on how you do your business, you need this information.
Okay.
So you clicked on physical attributes. Okay, so there's one right there where, you can put in the dimensions of this particular item. So you see a lot of different units of measure there. You've got length and height and width, um, container type and all of that. And, that's going to vary per item. You don't always have to have it. I mean, if you were selling art, for instance, a lot of people wouldn't care, how
You
big
would want
something
the
is.
height and the width.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, but um, yeah, probably so. I mean, if you go to Amazon and you go down into their specifications, you see kind of the details of what they're selling, and you can kind of gauge the size of it.
Yeah.
But that's where this data is kept.
Is Oracle, is it more detail, but the better?
Uh, it it really depends. You have to know what these attributes do with other applications. For instance, these physical attributes, they actually work with what Oracle calls their transportation management system. And a transportation management system is just a fancy way of saying uh, it it is an application for how to pack a truck or how to build a pallet.
Okay.
So if you didn't have these physical dimensions and you were using their transportation management system
They wouldn't
to
know what they
pack a
would need.
truck, yeah, well, it wouldn't know how much volume that material takes up. So it wouldn't, it might overload or underload the truck, and you don't want that. Gas,
Okay.
diesel's too expensive. So, um, so this is where these things take place, and not everybody just knows that. I know it from experience more than anything else. But, I think if you click the question mark, it might allude to the fact that Oracle Transportation Management uses it. Uh, no, it doesn't. Actually, it doesn't even bring up the right thing.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I was like, this is gonna make it difficult
Well, yeah.
for
Or it
anyone who doesn't know.
Well, it's not perfect. Oracle
What would
messes
I
up a lot.
search?
Um, Physical attributes.
Oops.
Yeah, item physical specifications. Oh, there you go. Container, container type. It still doesn't tell you. I mean, it tells you that, this is where you can keep this information. It doesn't tell you how it can be used. Oh, it tells you sort of how it can be used, but it doesn't tell you um, what other applications use it. You might scroll down a little further. It might have a little more. No, not really. Warehouse equipment, that's another good thing. If your racks in a warehouse can only hold so much weight, that's another reason you need to know these kind of things for your items.
Okay.
But you never know where this data is going to get used. Because it's here though, and because it's in the database, then somebody could say, well, okay, we've got to write an interface so that pickers out there in the warehouse don't overload their forklift or don't put too much weight on the rack system. So it's important.
Yeah.
All right, so close this and let's go back to our item.
Oh.
um, so anyway, if you go through like manufacturing service inventory, I'm not going to spend the time to explain what each of those attributes in each of those groups do. That's not so important right now.
Okay.
We'll learn that as we go. Uh,
Okay.
but it's important to other applications. Um, for instance, in the manufacturing application, the manufacturing attributes are very important. In the service applications, the service attributes are very important, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But it's probably not that beneficial to go in and discuss each attribute right now.
Okay.
You'd never remember all of them anyway. All right, we're going to skip structures. We'll come back to that. Click on the attachments tab. And this, it's pretty basic. If you click the plus icon down there, it'll let you do a file attachment. But if
Okay.
but if you do that list of values where it says type, you can also put in a URL or you could put in just a block of text. So
Okay.
it's not just files. Now, where does the client use something like that? Well, if you're a client that has goods that they ship overseas, then they have to have these material safety data sheets that go with them, so that they make sure that they're not putting something on an aircraft or an ocean vessel that could blow up or catch fire and stuff like that. So a lot of times you have to put those things in here so that they're linked to the item, and in your selling process or shipping process, those files could be accessed.
Okay.
So, but but the bottom line is it's just a way to attach information to your item record.
Okay.
Okay, close that. And let's go over to associations. Okay. If you'll look down there where it says organization name, you've got Seattle, Atlanta, Chicago. Okay. If your company that has, let's say you're a big distribution company, um, like Walmart, and you've got these distribution centers all over the place. Um, you need to set them up as unique individual inventory organizations. And the reason for that is because if you're shipping goods from one to the other, Oracle has to know the physical address of where that material is located. And it also needs to know if it's being shipped from one place to another, what's the in transit time? How long does it take to get from this distribution center to, say, another distribution center or to the in store that it's going to go to? So, long before you do any item setups, you'll have to have determined your organization structure. And you know, I think I sent you oh, I know in those links that I sent you to the um, to what I posted up on YouTube under private.
Uh-huh.
Those were there was one that covered inventory, and it covered inventory organizations and how those work together. But basically what it comes down to is if you've got material or goods that you store in a different physical address than the ones you store at another address. I mean, if you have to drive from one to the other, then you need separate inventory organizations,
Okay.
and these organizations are just where the goods are kept.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Now let's go to relationships.
You said you have to know how much time it's going to take.
Well,
How
you
do
don't,
they measure that?
well, for instance,
Do
uh,
they just Google map it and figure out how much time
yeah,
it take?
yeah.
Okay.
But,
I had to do that when when I set them up to go look at people's roofs and stuff.
yeah, yeah, they had to know the time it took to get there and get back and all that stuff. Same way with this, especially if you've got a planning system that's running this. And we'll talk about those later, but uh, you hear all this talk about supply chain and supply chain planning and problems with the supply chain. Well, that's because, about 20 years ago, companies realized that, keeping a ton of inventory around it tied up your capital, and you spend all this money buying stuff that's just sitting in a warehouse, and if it ain't moving, that money that you invested in it, it's not earning anything. So they figured out that, we need supply chains so that, we only carry enough material to meet the demand that we have. And as computers got more sophisticated, you know, it these applications got better and better, so that when you go to a store, you don't see a lot of stuff on the shelf because they've got a supply chain in place so that that can get replenished fairly quickly. I mean, used to be the backs of grocery stores, was full of tons of stuff. And you don't see that so much anymore. And the same way when you go to like Costco or Sam's, they've got, a lot of material in their overheads, but they tend to move it pretty quick. Um, you know, those days are gone where people just kept stuff on the shelf forever and ever. Um, so, you know, that's what these applications do. They really help with, moving those goods from supplier to customer.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to relationships. Now, this gets used some, but not a tremendous amount. Um, some companies have cross references where they can say that you know that this item is related to another item. As a matter of fact, if you just go like right now, you're on the related items tab. So if you click the plus and then go down to where it says type. Okay, here's all the different relationships that you could have. Um, you could have cross sells, you could have um, prerequisites, you could have service, split, substitute. I, Cross sell, upsell, and substitute. Those are the ones that I typically see. All this other stuff, Oracle has it out there. You could use it if you want, but I don't see a lot of people using it.
Okay.
The one that's the most effective is substitute because if somebody's ordering something and that something is out of stock, uh, the order management system can say, well, okay, show me my substitutes. But the only way it can do that is if you identify it as a substitute and you establish that relationship. So this particular item, CGF 11009, could be related to another item with a different part number, and you could establish it as a substitute.
So it would be just like a different brand of canned tomato.
Not necessarily a different brand because yeah, I suppose it could, because you'd probably keep a different brand under a different part number. Yeah. So you could establish it as a substitute.
Okay.
And I don't know. I don't know if the folks at Walmart, when they're picking uh, what people order, they may allow certain substitutes. They may even let the users. I've never tried to order through Walmart's grocery system to see if they do things like that. But I imagine they do allow some type of substitution. But you probably get to turn it on or off in case there's a particular brand you have to have.
Okay.
Just like I want Barks root beer. I don't want to substitute an A&W. Anyway, click cancel there, but that's where you would set up these different relationships.
What would the start date and end date imply?
Well, okay. Sometimes you create this relationship, but it's not permanent.
Okay.
Uh, you may say, for this time period, while this particular item is rare and difficult to obtain, we're going to allow this other substitute. Or they might have a special situation going on where they want to cross sell something. So they want to set up this relationship to exist while they're running that promotion and wanting to cross sell one item to another. Just like in Amazon, when you go there, you'll notice when you buy something, it also says, and some customers also bought this with it. Well, that's a
Yeah.
cross sell. Yeah.
But what would the date have to do with that?
Well, you may only want that cross sell to be valid for a specific amount of time. So you may want it to end.
Okay.
Or you may want to start it in the future and then end it a certain period after that. So it gives you that flexibility.
Okay.
Oracle throws a lot of dates on stuff so that, they're not permanent. Um, okay. I'll talk about trading partner items and GTIN a little later.
Okay.
You don't see them used very often, so I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about those. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to them, but we're not going to worry about them right now.
Okay.
Categories is very important. Remember when we looked at those browse items at the beginning of this session?
Uh,
Okay. You had the reason you had those categories off to the left there is because somebody went in and basically established the categories and then linked them to this item.
yeah.
Yeah, so this particular item has many catalogs and many categories. And
Yeah.
what's useful about that is that you could have reporting based on different things. Um, for instance, I may run a report that says, show me all of my canned tomatoes. But then I may have another report that says, show me all my purchases of canned goods. So, those would be in a different category as the other category. So it basically gives you these different categories. Um, I think their categories are a little off there, but that's okay. It gives you a good understanding. And if there's a hierarchy associated with the category, you can click on that hierarchy link there, and you can see the
This
hierarchy. Yeah, that. There probably isn't. Yeah, well, there it is. It's parent-child. But if you could have many categories within a category, this one just doesn't. You might
okay.
you might try another hierarchy, but I'll bet it'd be hard to find one that's. Well, click the arrow when it comes up. Yeah, I don't think there's any below it, but they can when you set them up. They could have that. I'm not going to talk about quality. That's a whole nother category there to deal with.
Okay.
All right, so I've explained all the stuff about an item. So let's go and make an item.
Okay.
So let's cancel this. Go up to the far right there, hit the cancel button, and it just say yes, because if you change anything, we don't want to save it. Oracle's pretty good about asking you that question. If you've changed something and you forgot that you've changed it, and it doesn't want you to leave that screen until you've made that decision that, oh, okay, I want to get out of this. So click done here, and we're going to go from browse items into create items. Done is in the far right upper. So bring up our tasks, go to create item. Okay, this form gives you the ability to either create a new item or you can create one from a copy.
Okay.
I think the copy is more powerful, but let's go through the create new first.
Okay.
All right. So remember how I said, most of the stuff that we create is either a finished good or a purchased item. Well, there are templates associated with those user item types. And those templates pre-establish all those attributes that we looked at. And the good thing about that is that we don't have to think about what those attribute settings need to be. We're just going to use the attribute settings that are from that template. So
Okay.
so and the reason that you didn't see another organization in that drop-down list is because in Oracle you have a hierarchy that says I've got to have a master item organization, and then I can have my child organizations underneath it. My
Okay.
child organizations, that's where I can do transactions and that's where I have my quantities on hand. But my item master is just for maintaining my items. So I have to create my items in my master item first and then associate them with my child organizations.
Okay.
All right. So come down to templates and I'll show you how this form works. Scroll down that list a bit. Let's just say we're going to make this a purchased item. So if you scroll down, you'll see purchased item. Okay. So you can use the arrow and you can move that to the right. Now you can take that FG design items and you can move that to the left because we don't want to use that template. But you can use multiple templates. But the problem with using multiple templates is it might be kind of hard to figure out which template set which attributes.
Okay.
So I always caution my clients and say, why don't you just stick to one template at a time until you get a better hang of it. So now if you click OK, so uh, I don't know who did this. Say yes.
Would
Somebody's
you
met.
need to put a title in the organization?
Well, normally it does. I don't know why that one doesn't have a title, but it is the item master. But yeah, usually when you set up those organizations, they have a definition. I don't know why that one didn't. Again, this isn't a database that I set up.
Okay.
But you'll notice, some of these attributes are already filled out, and then some of them aren't. The ones that aren't, you're going to fill in.
Okay.
The ones that are required have a little asterisk in the upper left of each of the prompts.
Okay.
So pick a part number and put it in the item field.
Does it matter?
Doesn't matter. Just can't pick a part number that someone else has used.
That's probably used.
I always use my initials and then a number, but you can make up what you want. All right. And then come down to description. Type in a description, just some text, whatever you want.
I need to like pick an item though.
No, you're making a new item.
I know, but I can't describe nothing.
It doesn't matter. You can say, this is Alicia's first test item.
Okay.
All right. And you'll see that there's also an asterisk over there by life cycle phase. And we're going to go straight into production with this. So pick production.
What would be these other ones?
Well, like if you were going into a design phase, then that would control that item's ability to how it gets used in the application. For instance, if I had a life cycle phase of design, I'd want to be able to buy the item. I'd want to be able to use the item in my business, but I may not be ready to sell it yet. So, that life cycle phase is just a way to let the system know, what phase of that item is in. Whereas obsolete might be something where, I don't want to buy any more of these. I want to sell what I have left.
Okay.
So you can do active or production. Right now it doesn't mean a whole lot. So
Okay.
okay, there's nothing else required. If you were to just hit the save button right now, it would save that item. All right, you've created your first item. Now there's
Okay.
not a lot of detail about this item. Doesn't have a picture, doesn't have a long description, doesn't have a formatted description. It's got the attribute settings that it needs to allow it to be purchased, but that's about it. And the only way I know that is if you go down to the specifications tab on the far left there, and you go down to where it says purchasing at the bottom there on the far left. And you see it says there's an attribute called purchased, and then to the right, there's an attribute called purchasable. Those are both set to yes.
Okay.
And that was what the template did for you. It set that up and allowed you to, pre-establish these attributes so that when the purchasing application works, it means that it will allow this item to be put onto a purchase order to a supplier.
Okay.
Is that enough for one day?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
the next step will be creating like, will I get to create an actual list of items?
Yeah, and I'll show you how to do that.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.
Oh, did it stop?
Uh